Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to WatchYouWant.com. Thanks for logging on. Today we're looking at two watches in one. This is the Jaeger-LeCoultre Duometre a Quantième Lunaire. Now the Duometre line is JLC's own modern innovation based on an 1881 pocket watch minute repeater chronometer that they have in their archives. Now that watch, on its best days, worked all right, but it was never something that they could serialize back in the day. Too complex, too many moving parts. The tolerances to manufacture that thing in series just didn't exist in contemporary tooling or watchmaking technique. Fast forward to 2007 and JLC debuts for the first time a production watch based on that 1881 movement. Two mainspring barrels operating in parallel, powering two separate drivetrains within one watch case. Now that first Duometre, the chronograph, was a sensation, won all kinds of awards, received recognitions as perhaps one of the few truly original innovations in watchmaking in the last 50 years. And the sequel came in 2010 with this watch, the Quantième Lunaire. Now, the idea behind all of the Duometre watches is to have two separate power sources. You could see those two mainspring barrels right here, powering two separate, again, parallel drivetrains, so that you can operate both the timing of the watch and complicated functions without dropping the amplitude of the balance. Now the amplitude of the balance, which is represented by the height of the oscillation, if you can imagine a sine curve, imagine the height of each peak, with the peaks representing the oscillations of this balance wheel. Now what happens when you operate a complication is you put an additional drain on the power and those oscillations drop. Again, more drain, the same amount of power, and you get a weaker heartbeat and you get irregular timing. And that's vexed everything from chronographs to calendar watches through the years, and minute repeaters for that matter. But JLC's solution was to have two separate power sources and two separate trains, and all the balance does, it doesn't physically push the movements along. What it does is it times them. So it provides that regulating organ, and in this case, one mainspring barrel operates the escapement just to keep it oscillating, and the other barrel is what actually pushes the hours, the minutes, the seconds, the flying second right there at 6 o'clock, the moon phase, and the date hand. So you've completely isolated that which drains power from the escapement and the escapement itself. When you put this watch on a chronoscope and you look at it, even during a date changeover or a moon phase jump, the amplitude is perfectly flat. Now this watch, with its two mainspring barrels, solves that problem of diminishing amplitude, but it also solves the problem of diminishing power reserve. Now in the past, some watchmakers, for instance F.P. Journe with his Sontograph chronograph, were able to run the complication right off the mainspring barrel, and while this does fix the problem of diminishing amplitude with the complication engaged, it also diminishes power reserve. For instance, the Sontograph goes from an 80-hour power reserve to about 24 with the chronograph running. By including two separate mainspring barrels and two separate running trains, JLC solves the amplitude drop, and it also solves the diminishing power reserve with the complication engaged. And to that end, you can't see it right here, but this skeletonized version of the movement features two power reserves in the cutouts, right here roughly at 4:30 and right here roughly at 7:30. There are small arcs featuring 50-hour power reserve indicators. Again, the iPhone kind of, as always, betrays me, so you can't see that perfectly. But what's great about this watch is you can monitor the power reserve separately, and winding the crown in different directions allows you to energize. I'll show you right here. You can actually see the ratcheting action of those two mainspring barrels. You wind in different directions, and one winds in a certain direction while the other basically freewheels and activates its ratchet to disengage it. And then when you change direction, vice versa. Beautiful decoration on this movement. JLC finishes the Duometre line to a standard that is essentially unseen below the six-figure mark in their model line. Now, the Grand Tradition watches, which are all 6 figures and up, feature the most ornate, baroque, and fine finishing in the JLC model line. The Duometre, which is right in the mid 5 figures, you know, about 47 to about 75 for the platinum variants, features the same level of finishing as the Grand Tradition because it is such a prestigious complication and an original invention for JLC. You'll see a unique Côte de Genève rendered as a radial sunburst here. That's called Côte de Soleil, or originating at the escapement, which is the heartbeat of the movement and the centerpiece of the case back. It's not brass coated in rhodium as with most JLC watches. It's actually, in the pocket watch tradition, a material sometimes called German silver, in French-speaking regions called maillot, and it is a combination of copper and nickel. It has a beautiful golden tone that only grows deeper with time. It's actually more corrosion resistant than rhodium-coated brass, so it's also more durable and makes for phenomenal longevity. But there's beautiful cobalt polished screws, blued to a deep cobalt luster, contrasting with the violet pivot jewels. You actually have two rhodium-coated barrels right here that were thusly coated to stand out from the movement bridges and plates themselves. All of the edges are beautifully beveled. There's perlage on the main plate below the balance. The finish on this watch is to a standard that you will not see in the JLC line below 6 figures, and it is breathtaking to behold. There's a reason why each of these watches comes with a boxed set that includes a loop. And on the dial, in addition to the traditional Duometre flying second at 6 o'clock, which by the way does hack when you pull the crown, so you can set the watch flying second and center second precisely to a reference time, for instance an atomic clock. You have the moon phase and the age of the moon, as well as a date hand on this dial. You can advance the date right here with this pusher, and over here you have foy hands displaying your hours and minutes. Now the watch is gorgeous. It is a traditional 42mm. There is a 40.5mm version of this watch. This is actually the larger traditional Duometre case shape, and to that end you could see that it features the brushed and polished contrasts of the Duometre case, the chunky, almost longa-like case proportions, and the soldered lugs, really characteristic of a very high-quality piece, and the case itself is finely finished, again, to a degree that's rare in the JLC lineup. So this watch is a feast for the senses, for the eyes, in the hands. Really, if you hold it up to your ear, it's got a lazy, traditional 21,600 vibration per hour heartbeat, very much like an old pocket watch. This watch is a beautiful fusion of the old and the new, just like it's a fusion of two separate movements in one case. The Duometre is a dichotomy. It may be the ultimate dichotomy in watchmaking. It's a 2-for-1 deal, and from WatchYouWant.com, you're getting this Duometre with all original boxes, papers, accessories, and yes, that beautiful magnifying loupe. So check it out in high-res photography on our website, WatchYouWant.com. I'm confident that when you have a chance to check out our high-quality, industry-leading pre-owned luxury watches, you will find the watch you want.